that they ought to be encouraging people to have these kind of programs instead of discouraging, because that's what community colleges are all about. I said, sometimes I think that you have the attitude I get from you is that you have an attitude kind of like the school to child raising that says, go find out what Johnny's doing and tell him to stop. it wasn't until it was all over with I realized that, well, that isn't exactly the way to win friends and influence people, but I just couldn't resist it, you know. So anyway, there were those factors all the way along, but as I say, the community college people with the Board of Education and the community college agency were very helpful and were very much on target. And OCCA was born during this time, and OCCA went through growing pains like a lot of people. Don Shelton had an idea that he could go ahead and, well, without going into a lot of detail, they have a governing board of students and board members and presidents and so on. And it was just too burdensome and complicated to be able to survive. But it evolved into a very useful coordinating agency, and when I was there, the coordinating, it has since grown into a very powerful lobbying agency, and it's now a very effective one in a real good sort of a way, because after all these years, they got presidents to agree on programs that they can present to the legislature and to other people, and so they can speak as one voice. And they didn't always do that before, because until then, the people were too easy to yield to self-interest and yield to sectional or individual differences.
Great, great. You came into community colleges when the Cotton's College opened up in '71, and it's now 2008. How do you think the community colleges in general have changed since you first became involved?
Well, I think they've demonstrated to people that they're here to stay, for one thing. It was kind of disconcerting in the early days of our college here, when Rogue Community College, Josephine County is a rather small place for a community college. And there were still people there that thought that it was just another idea that might come and go. Yeah, because in Josephine County especially, they had seen the Job Corps come in with all kinds of glorious plans and all the rest. And 10 years later, the Job Corps, except for the buildings and grounds, was folded up and gone. And they were not beyond saying that the same thing would happen with community college. And so they are here to stay. And I think that they, as finding their spot in the educational picture, they are not only here to stay, but they're learning how to work with other agencies, both the high schools in a terrific way, and early entrance and that type of thing, and with the colleges and universities on seamless programs into that with them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's happening throughout. And one of the fascinating things to me, going back to this class I took in community college, the fellow that taught the class had a debate topic he encouraged debates on whether the two-year college could continue to exist, or whether it was going to have to join the four-year college or go back down and be the 13th or 14th year of the public school system. And he himself believed that it was going to do one or the other. He didn't think that two-year college could exist. I felt even in the very beginning that it could exist and should exist and would exist, and it did. So.
Great. I'll wait for the truck to go in.
Yeah.
You think we should do
Well, okay. Henry, if you were asked, and I am asking, what advice would you give to community college leaders today?
Well, one piece of advice I would give would be to become familiar with this legislation I was showing to you earlier of what a community college should be. It's kind of like our founding fathers who put this in. This was when they first began. And yet I think people ignore that. They don't even know it's there. And I would say that that's it. That's it. The other thing, as part of that, I would say, it says in there that the college is to be comprehensive and to offer a wide variety of things, from college transfer down to basic education services and so on. And I would say that they should strive to continue to be comprehensive community colleges. And comprehensive not only in offering these subjects, but tying them in together so that you don't say that, well, I've got a comprehensive college because I have an academic section up here, and I've got a vo-tech section down here for dirty hands people, and I've got a dummy section over here for basic ed. You just avoid even thinking in those terms. You think about that we're all in this together. And that's the advice I would, and I think they need to continue to go ahead and think about it over and over and over constantly. And then I also think they need to improve their public relations programs. I've been very long a strong believer in public relations programs. And I'm talking now about, and there's so many fields of it, I'm talking to a large extent the information programs to get out to the people. Tell the people what you're doing out there. And I just don't think that they see that as part of their business. As a result, we have fantastic programs in this state, but not very many people know about it.
I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that we didn't mention that have been important to you, stories that you have, things that you'd just like to talk about as we conclude this.
Okay, very good. I think that one of the things I'd just like to run over quickly was step by step how the college first officially did get underway, because I think it's kind of fascinating to recall that, is that the state, the legislature intended that community college would cover the whole state, would be served by community college services. But even before that began, there was a need for vocational technical education, has always been there. And in Jackson and Josephine, in Jackson County, they began a study of how they could operate at the high school level by a vocational technical high school. And when I first came to Phoenix, this was in 1965, the community colleges were beginning elsewhere, but Jackson County hadn't heard about it yet. And so they were still studying this vocational technical high school. Even to the extent that as part of it, I went with a group of about a dozen superintendents and board members for a week on the East Coast, looking at some high school programs where they had. And they had some pretty advanced programs that were really pretty nice. Of course, you can imagine in population centers they had things like that. So we came back from there. So they said, well, let's now proceed to do that in Jackson County. Let's establish it. So then they began to look into legislation. How are we going to do that and all get together and finance this thing and administer it and so on? And there was no legislation that allowed them to do that. But lo and behold, there was legislation there showing that there was a thing called a community college could be established in that kind of a setting. And the community college, as one part of it, they said they could have programs for high schools. They could cooperate with high schools. They said, let's establish this as let's go ahead and go this route and establish this program. So then they began to talk with the State Department of Education. State Department said, no, you can't do that. You can't. That's a subterfuge to use that. The only way you can go is you want to be a community college. Well, okay, let's be a community college. Well, that's not a very healthy way to start a community college, see. And I'm telling you something that somebody else might disagree with me on this, and I was there. I saw it take place. So anyway, they started studying these community colleges, which were then already beginning. And they studied technical schools, too. They went up to Tacoma Technical School. I went with them up there. Look at that. So they found out, they said, well, let's get Josephine County in here. Maybe it should be the two counties. The State Department had told them, you two counties, you better get together. Okay, we'll talk with them. So I got them in there. And so before they were through, they found out that in order to do this, they'd have to have a two-county community college. Okay? So they got a petition. They hadn't a vote. Well, it just wasn't good from the start. It wasn't a good thing at all. And unbeknownst to them, I'm relating this from a Jackson County point of view. In Josephine County, they had begun to study for some time how to have a community college. Back in 1961, when records showed that Deb Spots was one who did this. They had Bill Loomis from the State Department of Education came down, and at that time he told them, if you can't do it, this has to be a two-year community college, two-county community college. So anyway,